Arizona Territory, 1873. The unforgiving sun beat down on the parched earth like God's own judgment, casting long shadows across the valley where the San Carlos Apache Reservation met the expanding frontier. Two worlds collided here, one ancient and proud, the other restless and hungry for land. Swift Arrow, 25 years old and son of a respected medicine man, believed one truth above all others. To survive in this changing world, an Apache must stand alone. The white man's promises were as empty as their whiskey bottles, and love was a luxury that warriors could ill afford. Swift Arrow's lean, muscular frame moved silently through the juniper and sage. His dark eyes, keen as a hawk's, scanned the horizon where dust clouds signaled another wagon train encroaching on traditional hunting grounds. His handsome face, bearing only the faintest shadow of stubble, remained impassive despite the anger burning in his chest. The reservation boundaries shrank with each passing season, and his people were expected to adapt or perish. The Apache who depends on others finds his strength diminished, his father had taught him. Swift Arrow had learned this lesson well, especially after watching his older brother fall in love with a Mexican girl, only to die defending her family from bandits. No, Swift Arrow would remain unburdened by such attachments. His purpose was to hunt, to fight when necessary, and to preserve what remained of his people's ways. Love was a weakness he could not afford. That morning, as golden light spilled across the mountains, Swift Arrow had received a vision while praying. A golden hawk circling above a spring. The omen troubled him, but duty called him to scout the perimeter of Apache land, watching for threats and game alike. Little did he know that 20 miles away, 19-year-old Nora Landry was experiencing her own form of isolation. Her golden blonde hair cascaded down her back as she peered through the dusty window of the stagecoach carrying her to Tucson. Her pale blue calico dress, once crisp and proper in Boston, now hung limp with travel dust. Dark circles shadowed her blue eyes, evidence of nights spent in restless worry. "You'll adjust to frontier life soon enough," her traveling companion, Mrs. Thornberry, assured her with a practiced smile. "Your uncle's trading post is well established. Quite civilized, I'm told." Nora nodded politely, though her heart ached. After losing both parents to influenza, she had no choice but to accept her uncle's invitation. The letter had promised opportunity and a fresh start, but Nora harbored no illusions about her situation. At 19, unmarried and without fortune, her options were limited. She'd been sent west to work in her uncle's store and, undoubtedly, to find a suitable husband among the frontier's limited offerings. "I need no one," she whispered to herself, clutching the locket containing her parents' miniatures. "I will make my own way." After watching her mother sacrifice everything for a husband who gambled away their security, Nora had sworn never to depend on anyone. Independence was her shield against heartbreak. The stagecoach rattled over a particularly deep rut, and Nora clutched the leather strap as Mrs. Thornberry gasped. A moment later, the sickening crack of braking wood filled the air, followed by the driver's shouts as the coach lurched violently to one side. Nora felt herself thrown against the door before everything went dark. She awoke to the sensation of something cool and wet against her forehead. Opening her eyes, she found herself lying beneath a cottonwood tree, the ruined stagecoach visible in the distance. The driver and Mrs. Thornberry were nowhere in sight, but kneeling beside her was a man unlike any she had ever seen. His dark eyes studied her with a mixture of curiosity and caution. He wore buckskin leggings and a cotton shirt adorned with intricate beadwork. A knife hung at his waist. Apache, she realized with a start, recalling stories that had circulated in Boston drawing rooms, tales of fierce warriors who showed no mercy. Yet the hands that pressed the damp cloth to her temple were gentle. When he spoke, his English was accented but clear. "You are injured. Others went for help. They feared I would scalp them." A flicker of bitter amusement crossed his face. "I told them I would watch over you." Nora tried to sit up, wincing as pain lanced through her head. "Why would you help me?" she asked, surprising herself with the directness of the question. Swift Arrow considered her words carefully. The stage had overturned near the spring he was tracking, the very place from his morning vision. Finding the white woman unconscious, blood trickling from a gash on her forehead, He'd been unable to leave her to the mercy of the elements or passing coyotes. The others, the driver and the older woman, had hurried toward the nearest ranch for help, leaving the unconscious young woman behind in their panic upon seeing an Apache approach. "I am not what your people think," he said simply, "and you were in the place shown to me in a vision." Something in his dignified manner calmed Nora's initial fear. "Thank you," she said, touching her bandaged forehead. "I'm Nora Landry. I'm traveling to Tucson, to my uncle's trading post." "Landry Trading?" Swift Arrow asked, his expression changing. "Yes, William Landry is my uncle. Do you know of him?" Swift Arrow nodded slowly. "He trades fair with the Apache, not like others." This unexpected connection bridged the vast gulf between them momentarily. Neither could have anticipated how this chance encounter would irrevocably alter the course of their lives. 2 days later, Swift Arrow delivered Nora safely to Tucson after the stagecoach driver failed to return. The journey had been filled with tense silences punctuated by cautious conversation as they navigated not only the physical terrain but the vast cultural divide between them. She learned that he was the son of a medicine man, educated briefly at a missionary school before returning to his people. He discovered she was an orphan, educated and independent in ways that surprised him. William Landry, a weathered man with kind eyes, welcomed his niece with genuine warmth, though his expression tightened upon seeing her Apache escort. "Swift Arrow," he acknowledged with a respectful nod. "You have my gratitude for bringing my niece safely to me." "The spirits guided our paths to cross," Swift Arrow replied. His eyes met Nora's briefly before he turned to leave. "Wait," Nora called. "I have nothing to offer as thanks, but your life is continuing," Swift Arrow interrupted. "That is enough." With those words, he disappeared into the gathering dusk, certain he would never see the golden-haired woman again. He was wrong. Spring gave way to the scorching heat of summer. Nora adjusted to life at the trading post, learning the business while enduring the scrutiny of Tucson society. Her beauty and Eastern refinement made her the subject of much interest among eligible bachelors, but she maintained a polite distance, focused instead on proving her value to her uncle's business. What none suspected was how often her thoughts turned to the Apache who had saved her. The trading post regularly conducted business with Indians from the reservation, and Nora found herself watching for Swift Arrow among them. When he finally appeared one sweltering August day, accompanying a group of Apache bringing woven baskets to trade, her heart betrayed her with its quickened pace. Swift Arrow felt her presence before he saw her. Something inexplicable pulled his gaze to where she stood behind the counter, golden hair neatly pinned, wearing a simple brown dress that somehow enhanced her beauty. Their eyes met across the crowded store, and for a moment, the noise and movement around them seemed to fade away. William Landry noticed the exchange and frowned slightly. "My niece has been a blessing to my business," he told Swift Arrow later, as they discussed terms for the baskets. "Several prominent men in town have expressed interest in courting her." The message was clear. Swift Arrow nodded once, his face impassive despite the unexpected sting the words caused. "She will make a good wife," he said, then turned the conversation back to trade. That night, alone in his camp outside town, Swift Arrow struggled with unfamiliar emotions. The young woman's face haunted him. Her courage during their journey, her quick mind, her respect for his ways, all had impressed him more than he cared to admit. But his father's wisdom echoed in his mind. The path of an Apache and a white woman could never join without bringing sorrow to both. Unbeknownst to him, Nora was engaged in her own internal battle. The arrival of Samuel Weston, a wealthy cattle rancher with political aspirations, had created expectations she was reluctant to fulfill. Her uncle gently encouraged the match, reminding her of the security it would provide. "He's respected, Nora. Has the governor's ear. A woman alone out here faces challenges you cannot imagine." "I'm not afraid of challenges, uncle," she replied, thinking of the journey that had brought her to his door and the man who had guided her safely through it. The following week, tragedy struck the reservation when several Apache children fell ill with fever. The Indian agent, more concerned with bureaucracy than human suffering, delayed sending medical supplies. Desperate, the Apache elders sent Swift Arrow to Tucson to purchase medicine directly. William Landry was away when Swift Arrow arrived at the trading post. Instead, He found Nora managing the store alone, dealing confidently with customers. When the last patron departed, Swift Arrow approached the counter. "We need medicine," he said without preamble. "Children are dying." Nora's expression softened with concern. "What kind of medicine?" "We have some supplies, but for serious illness, quinine and clean bandages." His voice remained steady, but Nora detected the urgency beneath. "I can help," she said, moving toward the storeroom. "My mother taught me nursing. I know which medicines work for which fevers." Swift Arrow shook his head. "It is too dangerous. The reservation is no place for a white woman." Nora finished, meeting his gaze steadily. "People are people, Mr. Arrow. Illness doesn't discriminate, nor should those who can help." Her determination startled him. "Swift Arrow," he corrected automatically. "Not Mr. And the danger is not only from illness." "I understand the risks," she countered, already gathering supplies. "But I cannot in good conscience send medicine without knowing if it's the right treatment. Children's lives are at stake." Their argument continued as she packed her medical kit, but Nora's resolve proved unshakable. By nightfall, they were riding toward the reservation, Swift Arrow tense with worry about bringing a white woman into his world, and Nora equally determined to prove herself more than a delicate Eastern flower. The following week transformed them both. Working tirelessly alongside the Apache women, Nora gained their cautious respect. The children began to recover under her care, and even the most suspicious elders acknowledged her skill. Swift Arrow watched as she moved among his people without fear or condescension, speaking softly to frightened children, showing proper deference to the elders. One evening, exhausted after treating the last feverish child, Nora stumbled from the medicine lodge. Swift Arrow materialized from the shadows to steady her. "You should rest," he said, his hand lingering on her arm longer than necessary. "I will," she promised. "But first, I need air." He led her to a rocky outcrop overlooking the valley, where the sunset painted the desert in hues of gold and crimson. They sat in comfortable silence until Nora spoke. "Your people have been kinder than I expected," she admitted. "The stories I heard in Boston. And my people hear stories of white cruelty that are true," Swift Arrow responded. "Yet you are not cruel." Their eyes met, and something shifted between them, an acknowledgement of the barrier they had begun to cross. Swift Arrow found himself sharing stories of his childhood, of Apache traditions, of his fears for his people's future. Nora spoke of her parents, her determination to remain independent, her disillusionment with society's expectations for women. "We are both alone in different ways," she observed. "The lone wolf survives," Swift Arrow replied, reciting a belief he had held unquestioned until now. "Perhaps," Nora said softly, "but the wolf who finds a pack thrives." The epidemic passed, and with it, Nora's reason for remaining at the reservation. Swift Arrow escorted her back to Tucson, both acutely aware that their time together was ending. The journey seemed too short, filled with conversations that circled around feelings neither dared express directly. William Landry greeted his niece with relief that quickly turned to concern when he saw the changed way she and Swift Arrow regarded each other. Later that evening, after Swift Arrow departed, he confronted her. "I've seen that look before, Nora. It can only lead to heartbreak. The worlds are too different." "I know," she whispered, fighting unexpected tears. "Nothing has happened, Uncle. Nothing will." "Samuel Weston has formally asked to court you," he continued gently. "He's a good man. Can provide security, respectability." "I understand," Nora interrupted, squaring her shoulders. "You're right, of course. Please tell Mr. Weston I would be honored by his attention." Over the following months, Samuel Weston courted Nora with proper attention to protocol. He was handsome in a conventional way, with sandy hair and confident bearing. His conversations centered on his growing cattle empire and political connections. He treated Nora with careful respect, if not passion, and she told herself this was what mature love must be: practical, comfortable, safe. Swift Arrow, meanwhile, threw himself into tribal matters, determined to forget the golden-haired woman who had somehow slipped past his defenses. When rumors reached the reservation about Nora Landry's courtship with the territory's most eligible bachelor, he accepted the news with stoic resignation. It was, after all, the natural order of things. Fate, however, had other plans. October brought an unusually early snowstorm to the mountains, followed by rapid warming that unleashed torrential flooding. The Landry trading post, situated near the usually docile river, found itself in the path of raging waters. Nora and her uncle worked frantically to move valuable inventory to higher ground as the river rose. Swift Arrow, in Tucson to discuss reservation boundaries with government officials, heard about the flooding and rode immediately to the trading post. He arrived to find the building partially submerged, with Nora and William trapped on the second floor as waters continued to rise. Without hesitation, Swift Arrow swam to the building and climbed through a window. "The structure is weakening," he told them urgently. "We must leave now." William's leg had been injured by falling debris. "Get Nora out first," he insisted. "No, I won't leave you, Uncle," Nora protested. A thunderous crack interrupted them as part of the floor gave way. Swift Arrow made a swift decision, fashioning a crude harness from blankets and ropes. "I will carry him," he told Nora. "You must swim beside us. The current is strong, but I know this river." What followed tested the limits of their courage and strength. The raging waters nearly claimed them multiple times, but Swift Arrow's knowledge of the river proved their salvation. They reached safety as the trading post collapsed behind them, everything Nora's uncle had built disappearing beneath the muddy waters. In the aftermath, with William recovering at Samuel Weston's ranch, Swift Arrow prepared to return to his people. Nora found him saddling his horse in the pre-dawn light. "You saved our lives," she said simply, her damp hair loose around her shoulders, borrowed clothes hanging loosely on her frame. "Again, your uncle is a friend to my people," Swift Arrow replied, not meeting her eyes. "Is that the only reason?" Nora asked, a new boldness in her voice. Swift Arrow's hands stilled on the saddle. "What answer would serve any purpose? You will marry the cattleman. It is better so." "Better for whom?" she challenged, stepping closer. "I don't love him." "Love is a luxury," Swift Arrow responded, echoing his long-held belief. "Security is what matters in this harsh land." "That's what I told myself," Nora admitted, "until I met someone who made me question everything I thought I knew." The tension between them was palpable, years of ingrained caution warring with desires neither had allowed themselves to acknowledge. Swift Arrow took a deliberate step backward. "The divide between our worlds cannot be crossed without consequences," he warned. "Your people would ostracize you. Mine would question my loyalty." "Perhaps," Nora conceded. "Or perhaps we let fear decide our paths when we should listen to our hearts." Before Swift Arrow could respond, Samuel Weston appeared, his expression hardening at the sight of Nora standing so close to the Apache. "Nora, you shouldn't be out here," he said, deliberately placing himself between them. To Swift Arrow, he added coldly, "The Indian agent is looking for you." Something about unauthorized absence from the reservation. The implied threat hung in the air. Swift Arrow's face remained impassive, but his eyes conveyed a silent message to Nora before he mounted his horse and rode away. That evening, Samuel proposed formally, presenting Nora with an ostentatious diamond ring. "With your uncle's business destroyed, this match makes even more sense," he explained pragmatically. "I can provide everything you need." Nora looked at the ring, then at the man offering it. He was everything society deemed appropriate: wealthy, respected, politically connected. Yet as she considered the safe, predictable future he represented, she felt nothing but emptiness. "I need time," she said finally. "Recent events have been overwhelming." Samuel's smile tightened slightly. "Of course. Though I should mention, there's been talk about your time on the reservation. Unfortunate rumors that could damage your reputation. As my wife, such gossip would cease immediately." The subtle threat beneath his polite words clarified everything for Nora. This wasn't about love or even respect. It was about possession, about appearances, about conforming to society's expectations regardless of one's heart. "I think," she said carefully, "that we may want different things from marriage, Mr. Weston." His charming facade slipped momentarily. "Is this about that Apache? Surely you can't be serious." "The man's a savage, Nora. He has shown more nobility than many so-called civilized men I've met," she replied, rising from her seat. "I'm grateful for your offer, but I must decline." Samuel's rejection turned to bitter anger. Within days, Nora found herself ostracized by Tucson society. Whispers followed her. Insinuations about improper behavior on the reservation, questions about her virtue, suggestions that she had gone native. William Landry, though supportive of his niece, worried for her future. "Perhaps we should return east," he suggested as they sat in the small rented rooms that now served as their home. "Start fresh where these rumors haven't reached." "Running away solves nothing," Nora replied. "Besides, this is my home now. I won't be driven away by gossip." Her determination was tested when Samuel Weston's influence began affecting their ability to rebuild. Loans were mysteriously denied. Potential business partners suddenly cooled. Meanwhile, on the reservation, Swift Arrow faced his own challenges. The Indian agent, acting on Weston's complaints, restricted his movements and questioned his loyalty. Despite these obstacles, fate conspired to bring them together again. A letter arrived from the Indian agency requesting William Landry's assistance in mediating a dispute. With his trading experience and reputation for fairness among both settlers and Apache, he was considered neutral ground. Unable to travel with his still healing leg, he sent Nora in his place. Swift Arrow's heart nearly stopped when Nora walked into the agency meeting. Months had passed since he'd seen her, yet the impact of her presence remained unchanged. She wore a simple green dress, her blonde hair neatly arranged, her bearing proud despite the whispers that followed her entrance. The dispute centered on water rights, a critical issue in the arid territory. As the meeting progressed, it became clear that Samuel Weston's ranch was diverting water upstream from the reservation, causing crops to fail and livestock to suffer. Weston himself arrived midway through the discussions, his face darkening when he spotted Nora. "This meeting is a formality," he announced dismissively. "The water flows through my property. The law supports my right to use it as I see fit." "The treaty promises water access to the Apache," Nora countered, surprising everyone with her knowledge of the agreements. "Diverting the entire stream violates those terms." Weston's eyes narrowed. "I wasn't aware we had a female lawyer present," he said, drawing chuckles from his supporters. "Perhaps Miss Landry's unusual friendships have confused her about her place." The intended humiliation backfired. Nora remained composed, presenting documents her uncle had provided showing the treaty boundaries and water rights. Swift Arrow watched her with growing admiration, recognizing the courage it took to stand against a powerful man in a room that largely supported him. The meeting ended in deadlock, with the Indian agent promising to consult territorial authorities. As people dispersed, Swift Arrow approached Nora cautiously. "You spoke well," he said quietly. "Few would defend Apache rights against their own kind." "Justice doesn't recognize race," she replied. "And I'm beginning to think my own kind is not defined by something as arbitrary as skin color." Their conversation was interrupted by Weston, who gripped Nora's arm roughly. "You've made an enemy today," he warned. "Your uncle's recovery depends on my goodwill. Remember that." Swift Arrow stepped forward instinctively, his hand moving to his knife. Weston released Nora with a contemptuous laugh. "Threatening a white man, Indian? That's grounds for arrest." "I threaten no one," Swift Arrow replied evenly. "But I will not allow you to manhandle a woman who deserves respect." The tense standoff broke when the Indian agent returned. Weston departed with a final warning glance, leaving Nora shaken but resolute. "He will retaliate," Swift Arrow cautioned as he escorted her to her wagon. "Probably," she agreed. "But backing down would only encourage him. My father always said that bullies grow stronger when unchallenged." Swift Arrow helped her into the wagon, their hands touching briefly. "Your father was wise. But wisdom does not always ensure safety." "Safety isn't everything," Nora responded, meeting his gaze directly. "Some things are worth the risk." The loaded words hung between them, acknowledged but not fully addressed as Swift Arrow stepped back and Nora drove away. Weston's retribution came swiftly. William Landry received notice that the small plot they'd purchased for a new store was being claimed through an obscure prior filing. Simultaneously, rumors intensified about Nora's inappropriate relationship with the Apache warrior, causing even sympathetic townspeople to distance themselves. On the reservation, drought conditions worsened as Weston's dam diverted critical water. Crops withered, and tensions rose. Swift Arrow found himself caught between young warriors advocating armed resistance and elders counseling patience while governmental channels were pursued. His own thoughts increasingly turned to Nora, wondering how she fared amid the hostility her defense of his people had provoked. The situation escalated when several young Apache warriors, driven by desperation, raided Weston's cattle. The territorial militia responded with disproportionate force, surrounding the reservation and threatening action unless the thieves were surrendered. Swift Arrow, designated as translator, found himself face-to-face with Weston during tense negotiations at the agency. "Surrender the guilty parties, or we'll consider all of you complicit," Weston demanded, his militia backing him with rifles ready. "The men took 4 cattle because their children are starving," Swift Arrow responded, maintaining his dignity despite the hostile surroundings. "Your dam has destroyed their crops." "Not my concern," Weston replied coldly. "Indians stealing cattle get hanged. That's territorial law." The standoff continued through the night. Swift Arrow, permitted to return to the reservation to consult with tribal leaders, found himself torn between protecting the young men and preventing a larger conflict that could destroy his people. The elders, recognizing the gravity of the situation, reluctantly agreed to surrender the warriors the following day, knowing it likely meant their deaths. That night, as Swift Arrow performed solitary prayers for guidance, a soft voice called his name from the darkness. "Swift Arrow? It's Nora. Please, I need to speak with you." He found her hiding near the boundary markers, her face pale with worry. "You shouldn't be here," he warned, glancing around for patrols. "If Weston's men find you." "I had to come," she interrupted urgently. "Samuel plans to make an example of those men. He's already built gallows in town." Swift Arrow's expression hardened. "The agent promised a fair hearing." "The agent answers to Weston now," Nora explained. "But there's more. While reviewing my uncle's old documents, I found something crucial: the original survey maps of the reservation boundaries. They clearly show the water source lies within Apache territory. Weston's dam is illegal under both territorial law and federal treaty." Hope flickered briefly in Swift Arrow's eyes before reality reasserted itself. "Maps will not help if the warriors are hanged tomorrow. That's why we need to get these to the territorial governor immediately," Nora pressed. "His representative is in Silver City, just 2 days' ride. With these documents, he could issue an immediate stay." Swift Arrow questioned. "I can't do this alone," Nora admitted. "And you're the only person I trust." The proposition was dangerous for them both. Nora risking her reputation and safety, Swift Arrow facing charges of reservation escape and possible blame for the escalating conflict. Yet the alternative was watching young men die and his people suffer continued injustice. "If we are caught," he began. "Then we face the consequences together," she finished resolutely. Under cover of darkness, they slipped away, Nora leaving a letter for her uncle explaining her actions, Swift Arrow entrusting a tribal elder with his intentions. Their journey began as a desperate race against time, but as miles passed beneath their horses' hooves, it transformed into something else, an opportunity to speak freely, away from the judging eyes of both their communities. Camping the first night in a secluded canyon, they talked into the early hours. Swift Arrow described his childhood dreams before reservation life confined his people. Nora shared her fears of ending up like her mother, whose love for an unworthy man had led to complete dependency. "I swore I would never give anyone that power over me," she confessed as they sat beside a small fire. "Then I met you, and I realized there are men worthy of trust." Swift Arrow studied her across the flames, her golden hair glowing like a halo in the firelight. "And I believed that caring for someone would make me weak," he admitted. "But when I thought of you with Weston, I felt only hollow emptiness, not strength." The confession hung between them like a fragile bridge spanning their different worlds. Neither dared cross it fully, aware of the obstacles still facing them. They reached Silver City the following day, only to learn the governor's representative had departed for Fort Bowie. Without hesitation, they altered course, pushing themselves and their horses to the limits. Time was running dangerously short. At dawn on the 3rd day, the morning the warriors were scheduled to hang, they finally located the governor's man, Colonel James Reynolds. Exhausted but determined, Nora presented their case and evidence. The colonel, a fair-minded veteran with no connection to Weston, reviewed the maps with growing concern. "These clearly support your claims," he acknowledged. "I can issue an immediate injunction against both the executions and the water diversion." Relief washed over them, but it was short-lived. The colonel's next words chilled their blood. However, the executions were scheduled for sunrise. Even with my fastest rider, I fear we may be too late. Swift Arrow's face remained stoic, but Nora saw the flash of devastating grief in his eyes. She reached for his hand instinctively, propriety forgotten in the face of such potential tragedy. "Send your riders," she urged the colonel, "and pray they arrive in time." The agonizing wait that followed tested them both. Swift Arrow retreated into himself, preparing for news of death and the guilt of having failed his people. Nora stayed near, respecting his need for space while ensuring he knew he wasn't alone. Late that afternoon, a rider returned with news. The executions had been halted literally at the last moment. The warriors stood on the gallows with nooses around their necks when the colonel's messenger arrived with the stay order. The Apache would be held for a formal hearing where the water rights dispute would be properly evaluated. The relief that flooded through Swift Arrow broke something inside him, the carefully constructed wall between his heart and the world. When he turned to Nora, she saw raw emotion in his eyes for the first time. "You risked everything," he said softly. "For my people. For men you never met. For justice," she corrected. And her voice faltered. "For you." The admission changed everything. Standing in the dusty courtyard of Fort Bowie, surrounded by soldiers and the trappings of the very government that had confined his people, Swift Arrow made a decision that defied all his previous beliefs about survival and strength. He reached for Nora's hand, publicly acknowledging what had been growing between them since that first meeting by the overturned stagecoach. "You once said some things are worth the risk," he reminded her. "I was afraid to believe it. And now?" she asked, her blue eyes searching his face. "Now I know fear is not wisdom," he replied. "And the greatest strength comes not from standing alone, but from finding someone to stand beside." Their return journey to Tucson was fraught with uncertainty about the reception awaiting them. The colonel's orders had halted the immediate crisis, but Weston's influence remained powerful, and both Apache and white communities would question their alliance. What they discovered upon arrival defied expectation. William Landry, galvanized by his niece's courageous stand, had leveraged his remaining connections to expose Weston's water theft to neighboring ranchers who had also suffered from his dam. The coalition that formed had already begun legal proceedings to remove Weston from his position on the Territorial Council. The Indian agent, sensing the shifting political winds, suddenly discovered irregularities in Weston's land claims adjacent to the reservation. As for the Apache warriors, they were released with time served, returning to a reservation where water once again flowed freely thanks to the dismantled dam. Yet personal challenges remained. Swift Arrow faced disapproval from tribal elders concerned about his growing relationship with a white woman. Nora encountered continued prejudice from Tucson society, with invitations withdrawn and whispers following her through the streets. Their worlds, though briefly aligned against a common enemy, remained largely separate and suspicious of each other. For weeks, they navigated this tenuous existence, Swift Arrow fulfilling his tribal obligations while finding reasons to visit Tucson, Nora helping her uncle rebuild his business while studying Apache customs and language. They snatched moments together like forbidden treasures, each encounter deepening their connection while highlighting the barriers between them. The turning point came unexpectedly. A mixed-blood Apache woman named Morningstar, married to a Mexican trader, approached Nora after church services one Sunday. "My grandmother was a healer," she said without preamble. "She taught me that spirits recognize each other beyond the bodies they wear. When I see you with Swift Arrow, I see such recognition." Nora, startled by the directness, could only nod. "The path you consider is difficult," Morningstar continued, "but not impossible. My husband and I live in both worlds by creating our own. Perhaps you should visit our home, see how we have managed." The invitation opened a door Nora hadn't known existed. Over the following months, she discovered a small but resilient community of mixed families living on the borders between cultures, not fully accepted by either world, perhaps, but finding strength in creating their own traditions that honored both heritages. Swift Arrow, meanwhile, engaged in deep conversations with his father, the medicine man whose wisdom he had always respected. "The world is changing," the elder told him after long contemplation. Our people must find new paths to survive. Perhaps your path with the golden-haired woman is one the spirits have designed, not to diminish our ways, but to ensure they continue in new forms. These permissions, however qualified, gave them courage. On a crisp autumn evening 1 year after their first meeting, Swift Arrow found Nora walking alone along the river that had once threatened her life. The setting sun painted the landscape in the same golden hues as the day they had sat together on the reservation outcrop, speaking of loneliness and packs. "I have been thinking," he said without greeting, "about wolves." Nora smiled, remembering their conversation. "Have you?" "The lone wolf survives," he recited, then paused. "But survival alone is not living fully. I have watched the wolf packs hunt, protect their young, howl together under the moon. They know something the lone wolf has forgotten." "And what is that?" Nora asked softly. Swift Arrow took her hands in his, a gesture that would have been unthinkable a year before. "That strength comes in different forms. That being vulnerable to one you trust makes you stronger, not weaker." Tears shimmered in Nora's eyes as she recognized her own journey reflected in his words. "I was so determined to need no one," she whispered. "So certain that independence meant never opening my heart." "We were both wrong," Swift Arrow acknowledged. "And perhaps we can be right together." From his pocket, he produced a small object, a silver band intricately worked with symbols of both his heritage and hers. Not a traditional Apache token, nor a conventional white engagement ring, but something new that honored both worlds. "Our path will not be easy," he cautioned, holding the ring between them. "There will always be those who disapprove, who seek to separate us. And there will always be those who understand that love isn't confined by boundaries others create." Nora countered. "I don't need easy. I need real." As the last light faded from the sky, Swift Arrow knelt before her, adopting the white man's tradition while speaking in his native Apache tongue the most beautiful words of devotion he knew. When he finished, he switched to English. "I ask you to walk beside me, not behind me or before me, to create something new with me that honors what we both are." Nora's heart overflowed as she extended her hand, allowing him to slip the ring onto her finger. The band caught the dying sunlight, glinting like a promise. "I've been waiting for someone like you," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "Someone who sees me truly, who challenges me to be more than I thought possible." Swift Arrow's normally stoic expression transformed as her words reached the deepest part of him. For the first time since childhood, he felt tears prick his eyes. The walls he had built around his heart, the belief that an Apache warrior must stand alone, that love was weakness, crumbled completely. "And I have been waiting without knowing it," he admitted, rising to stand before her. "For someone brave enough to show me that the strongest heart is one open to love." Their marriage the following spring combined elements of both cultures. A Christian ceremony performed by a sympathetic minister, followed by traditional Apache blessings from Swift Arrow's father. William Landry gave his niece away with tears in his eyes, having come to respect the character of the man she had chosen. Not everyone approved. Some townspeople boycotted the event. Certain tribal members kept their distance. But others came forward in support. The mixed families Nora had met, Apache elders who recognized Swift Arrow's wisdom, progressive settlers who believed in a future where cultures could coexist with respect. They established their home on land that straddled reservation boundaries, a symbol of their determination to belong to both worlds while creating their own. Swift Arrow continued to advocate for his people's rights, while Nora used her education to establish a small school where both Apache and settler children learned each other's languages and customs. Over the years, their union produced 3 children who grew up fluent in both cultures, proud of their dual heritage. Their home became a place where disputes were mediated, understanding fostered, bridges built. Though challenges remained, periods of prejudice, instances of hostility, moments of doubt, they faced them together, drawing strength from the love that had defied convention. On their 10th anniversary, sitting on the porch of the home they had built together, Nora leaned against her husband's shoulder. "Do you remember what you told me about the lone wolf?" she asked. Swift Arrow smiled, threading his fingers through hers, a gesture that still filled him with wonder after all these years. "That the wolf who finds a pack thrives," he recalled. "We've created quite a pack," Nora observed. watching their children play in the yard alongside their cousins from both cultures. Swift Arrow followed her gaze, his heart full. The young warrior who had once believed love was weakness now understood it was his greatest strength. The path they had forged was neither Apache nor white, but something new and vital, a bridge between worlds that offered hope for a different future. "We have," he agreed, pressing his lips to her temple, "and we are stronger for it." As twilight settled over the land their love had transformed, Swift Arrow reflected on how far they had traveled from that first encounter by an overturned stagecoach. His father had been right, the world was changing. But with Nora beside him, he faced those changes not with fear, but with hope, their love a testament to what was possible when hearts recognized each other beyond the boundaries others created. In the end, it was not about surviving alone, but about thriving together, a truth that had melted his warrior's heart when she whispered those simple words that changed everything. "I've been waiting for someone like you."